So this weekend is a very, very special weekend. Manchester Cathedral is seeing the ordination of no less than 37 people over this weekend. Yesterday, 3rd of July, 12 priests were ordained, and today, 4th of July, and that's why it's such a privilege to have Nick with us, because really he should have been there. 25, no less than 25 deacons, the largest number ever ordained in a single year in Manchester, are being also ordained at Manchester Cathedral. At the same time, there is a headline in the Church Times about a motion at General Synod this month. This is going to be introduced by our Archbishop of York, who is really shaking things up, quite rightly. I think we need somebody to do something. His vision is for the establishment of 10,000 new churches in England. But the difference is these churches are going to be predominantly lay-led. And the vision is for these 10,000 new churches to be established over the next 10 years. And today we celebrate lay ministry in our own very special way as we recommission Gwyneth as our authorised lay minister. Very appropriately, it doesn't always happen, but we've got a lovely coincidence in the collect today, which is a prayer for the whole body of the church. It's a prayer for all God's faithful people in their vocation and ministry. Our gospel reading likewise is a celebration of ministry. Still relatively early on in his ministry, Jesus begins to delegate. And that is because ministry is always shared. Jesus delegates the task of teaching and healing and deliverance to his 12 apostles. He doesn't persist in being the sole minister, the sole teacher, the sole healer. No, he begins to share his ministry with others, and this is in the DNA of the Christian church. Sadly, not always in the DNA of the Anglican Church. There's an amazing sense of potential here. The 12 are sent out 2 by 2 with very little baggage or equipment, and it seems very few instructions, except to simply go and seek out the hospitality of the people to whom they are being sent. It's almost as if Jesus is saying to them, just go and make friends. And it's almost as simple as that. It feels like a real adventure. What will become of them? How will they be received? But there's a sense too that the 12 apostles can and will achieve so much more than Jesus can do on his own. There's a sense of potential in the first half of our reading too, even as Mark describes the thoroughly lukewarm welcome that Jesus receives in his own hometown of Nazareth. Even in the midst of that lukewarm welcome, there is a sense of potential, and this actually lies in certain members of Jesus' own family. As well as Jesus' mother Mary, 4 brothers of Jesus are mentioned by name, James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. At this point, maybe they shared in the skepticism of Nazareth as a whole. Thinking back to when we read in chapter 3 of Mark, it seems as though Jesus' family were actually quite hostile to Jesus' own ministry and mission at that point. And maybe even at this point they shared in that skepticism of their hometown. How could their older brother, the local handyman, have such spiritual authority? But if they did share in that skepticism at this point, it clearly didn't stay that way. James, the first of the brothers mentioned, went on to become one of the most important leaders of the church in Jerusalem and the early church generally. In fact, some early church histories go on to name him as Bishop of Jerusalem. His name is mentioned several times in the New Testament without any kind of explanation or elaboration, as if everyone was supposed to know who he was. And I'm sure the original readers of Mark's Gospel would have known who James was. And here he is mentioned in this particular story. The other brothers, according to a reference in 1 Corinthians 9, where Paul refers to the brothers of the Lord, and he's not just referring to brothers kind of generically, as in brothers and sisters, the church. No, the specific brothers of the Lord. They apparently became itinerant missionaries. And in another lovely bit of early church history, eventually the grandsons of one of these brothers, Judas or Jude, and their names were Zochar and another James, they are recorded in the early histories of being hauled before the Emperor Domitian in AD 90. They were being accused of belonging to some kind of new dynasty established by Jesus. The Roman authorities at this point were clearly very, very touchy about the growing Jesus movement. They thought that Jesus' followers were trying to establish a new kingdom, because that's the language they often used. And they thought that they would therefore interrogate the family, the closest family of Jesus. So the histories go, Zochar and James, the great nephews of Jesus, are hauled before Domitian, and they are interrogated about this so-called dynasty that might be being established. Their response before the emperor was to show their worn and their calloused hands as proof that they were simple, humble farmers. But such was their faithfulness and gentleness with which they testified to their great uncle's message, that apparently Domitian decided at that point to stop persecuting all those who followed Christ. It's a lovely story. Ordinary people. Ordinary people. Whether that was Peter or Mary or the rest of the apostles or members of Jesus' own family. Ordinary people who were maybe very skeptical of Jesus' claims to begin with, but who eventually ended up in active mission and ministry in the name of that same Jesus. This is, always has been, and always will be the lifeblood of the church. Ordinary people. Ordinary people like you and me. So how do you respond to this reading today? How have you grown maybe in your confidence in Jesus? How do you share in his ministry and his mission? Where is Jesus sending you? And if you're tempted to say, well, I'm nothing special, what can I do? That is almost certainly what the likes of Peter and Mary and James and Joseph and Judas and Simon said about themselves too. And yet they went on to do extraordinary things. When it comes to sharing in Jesus' ministry, and no disrespect to myself or Gwyneth or anyone being ordained or commissioned today, maybe not being someone special is exactly the point. Amen.